Karl Brady has given several talks at this conference over the years, and he gave a wonderful talk that's still remembered fondly by everybody who attended because of the spectacular finds and, of course, his wonderful book, Warships, U-Boats, Liners, and a guide to shipwrecks mapped in Irish waters was published in 2012. And Karl continues to write volumes and to produce wonderful results and wonderful excavation results. So we'll get an update from Karl today on those spectacular finds of all dates, boats from prehistoric date right up to 19th century yachts, and various artefacts that have been found in the River Corrib and Lough Corrib. Over to you, Karl.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks for putting pressure on me to perform now, especially after Mick's great talk. So yeah, I have spoken here a few times before on Lough Corrib and the work we're doing there, and in various places around the lake in Headford, in University, and Oughterard. Just telling some of the results of our work over the last 12 years. We first started diving in the lake in 2011. So I tried to change up the talk a bit today, just to focus on some of the more recent material we've been working on, rather than repeating a lot of the exciting results we found before. So I hope that doesn't disappoint. I don't have a load of finds today, but if I have time, I have kept some space for two of my favourite logboats that we've been working on, which you might have heard of before. So, as Jim said, I work in the underwater archaeology unit. We're a small unit, and our main brief really is to manage, protect underwater archaeology. And part of that main brief is to map and identify and protect historic wrecks, particularly wrecks over 100 years old. And we have a large database of wrecks of 18,000 documented losses in our territorial waters. These type of boats turn up every year. There's one or two that tend to turn up every year. But in more recent years, we have had the joy of investigating a number of boats that turned up in Lough Corrib. And before, this is Trevor Nortich here, who's done fantastic work mapping the lake. Started in the late noughties, continued to map the lake throughout in up to about 2015 or so. And as part of that wonderful work he was doing, trying to figure out where all the dangers are in the lake and map the lake, he started coming across these anomalies on the lake bed, which he reported to us. He's a fine book there, which you should all get if you're going out into the lake. But this bottom image here on the right, he uses a side scan sonar, and he started coming across images like this, and he reported them to us, asking us what were they. So this is the first site we dived here. It's about, I think it's a 10 meter long double-end vessel. We were very excited by it when we first saw this image. We thought maybe it's one of these Viking-style vessels that we often hear about and read about, but we've yet to find in Ireland. But as soon as we dived, it was quite clear that it's a kind of quite a late vessel, probably late 20s or late 19th century or early 20th century. It's off in Ashambo, where there's kind of I think there's a Victorian house or late 19th century house, and it's probably, we imagine, associated with that. And a finely built kind of probably pleasure boat or maybe racing boat. So that was the start of our journey back in 2011. So when we kind of, showed Trevor what to look for in his sonar data, he started reviewing all of his other data. And very soon he started coming up with a whole load of new sites. And I think to date he's probably reported 100 potential sites to us. And we have been diving these sites over the years since 2011. Every summer, sometimes winter, maybe 2 or 3 projects a year, depending on funding resources and how busy we are. So we've carried out hundreds and hundreds of dives on the lake, and probably mainly focused on about 50 or so sites, most of which are log boats, but I will discuss a few wrecks here. Okay, that's just that. So most of the sites I'm going to talk about is a logboat, and sometimes I give a talk and then people come to me afterwards and say, what is a logboat? Yeah. So I thought I better explain this here. And basically it's a vessel that's hollowed out and shaped from a single tree. They're quite simple vessels in many ways, but as we can see from a lot of the material from Lough Corrib, that they actually can be quite sophisticated and can show high levels of craftsmanship and carpentry. This one here on the right, it's a replica Iron Age logboat that was built in a lake, Lough in Scotland, and just one of their style of crannogs here, replica crannog there on just above it there. So there's communities around Europe who actually build these every year and have races and regattas. And there was one just held in Lake Constance in Austria recently. And you have people coming from all countries, kind of to race these boats. So I'd love to see at some stage, maybe we'll get that going, get a team from Ireland going over to compete with these guys. So as I say, we've 18,000 shipwrecks out there. We can't go out and dive every single shipwreck. But when Trevor Norwich started reporting these sites to us, we dived around the two. We started to get really exciting results from nice finds. So we made a decision to analyse what's the threat to them, what's the importance of them, and then we decided to carry out a project of diving on a number of the sites because there are threats. Invasive species is one. You get these invasive weeds, this African curly weed that can kind of grow in the shallow water. They can grow onto these log boats, so it's a hard surface for them to get the roots in. The roots go in and can start to destroy it. Zebra mussels, again, is a big threat to them because these little invasive kind of mollusk attach onto the boat. And you can see some on, I don't know if you can see some on this bottom one here. The little white flecks there, they're all zebra mussels. And they attach onto the wood. Their tentacles go into the wood, and then over time they die. And as they die, they probably pull off a little bit of wood with them, and they slowly delaminate the surfaces of these boats and eat away. They're only there recently, but the fear is over time they could cause significant damage to these boats. And we do see that log boats like this that people put up the surface of the wood, they're certainly a target for these mussels. There are other threats, potentially anchoring. We have seen some log boats which probably from unintentional anchoring and so on have been damaged by the anchoring activity. So, and then obviously we've seen some unlicensed or kind of activity on some of the log boats, which has caused some damage. And again, not necessarily always intentional, but just curious people going down, and some of these boats are so fragile, it's very easy to damage them. So yeah, we've carried a program of scuba diving mainly. We've provided a couple of small vessels. Anybody who's on the lake might see us from time to time out there. We've a bright orange float and a rib, and you might spend a week to 10 days at a time out there, and we target different sites and go in, try and record what's there, try and assess its nature, its state, its size, its what it's made of. If there's any vulnerable archaeology on it that might need to be rescued, like important artifacts. Take a shallow record of it, and then we try and cover up the site to make sure that they're well buried so that they're protected for the future. So I think we have about 50 definite logboat sites at the moment, and you can see most of these have been identified by Trevor Norwich. You can see there's a big concentration in the middle of the lake there at Lough Ferry in Kilbeg. And I suppose it's kind of surprising that for an area that had no logboats probably 10 years ago, there's now 30 or so in this concentration. It's also interesting that there's more kind of, in this image, there's more sites on the water now that we've identified than on land. So most of these sites here are late Bronze Age and Iron Age, with a few outliers at different periods. So, but we don't have the kind of mirror kind of settlement sites dating to those periods on the land for whatever reason. They're probably there somewhere, but they're yet to be found. Also, this is obviously an important ferrying point on the lake. It's the narrowest part of the lake. It's only 600-700 meters wide. We have the townland of Lough Ferry on the south, Kilbeg on the north side of the lake there. And undoubtedly, this was an ancient ferrying point going back possibly to Neolithic times or further. Definitely during the Bronze Age, because there's so many ferry boats here, and then into the Iron Age, and obviously continue right up to recent times. And we know we've records from the 19th century for ferrying going on here. And the place name obviously is also a good indicator of that. And I'm just wondering, has anybody come across any references to ferrying at this location prior to the 19th century? I haven't been able to find it, but it would be nice to be able to confirm that. So we've investigated about 40 actual logboats and wrecks, and I had a hard job to try and decide what to talk about today, because I want to talk about all of it, and I could spend a whole day here talking about it, but you wouldn't forgive me for that. So I had to just pick a few of recent sites we focused on and tell you a bit about those, and then I'd say at the end I can maybe talk about two of the more kind of spectacular sites if I have a bit of time. So up until recently, the earliest boat we had was this vessel here. It's a 12.5 metre long oak logboat near Annakeen, just to the west of Kilbeg there. This is the first logboat we dived, and it's almost an exact replica of the logboat that's on display in the museum, Kildare Street. If anybody's been to the National Museum there, you'll see this 15 metre long logboat. So the exact same design, this kind of longitudinal ridge going down the length of the middle of it, and these cross ridges, almost like as if they're like fake or false keels and ribs on a vessel. And these two vessels date to the exact same period, almost to the exact same century. And they're basically come from the same watercourse, and that the Lurgan boat, which is from North Galway, there is a river that leads down to Lough from that. There's a third boat up in Carneden, which is in South Mayo, and again, it's the exact same design as this, and exact same features and exact same date. So there's probably people who decided in the area around 2400 BC that they want to build a boat exactly like this with this exact same design for whatever reason. We're not sure. But anyway, I don't want to talk about it today. I just want to say what the reason that was the earliest boat, and to follow on from Mick's talk here and the early Stone Age evidence. Only the last few years we've found evidence that we've two probable Stone Age boats, one definitely Neolithic, one Neolithic or possibly Mesolithic. Now, this image isn't great, but I'm going to show you a video. What you're looking at here is an 8 metre long pine logboat, just the base of it. It's the same colour as the sediment on the lake bed, and this is a 3D model we did of it, but you can maybe get an idea from this. I have a little video which I hope to play, and I hope it works, is that it's about 80 centimetres wide, pine logboat. Only the floor of it remains, the side walls are gone, and we can see all the staining from the pine and the kind of tiger skin pattern that the wood grain you get on pine log boats. And we've been looking for Stone Age vessels on the lake for the last 10 years, because we were finding lots of Bronze Age and Iron Age and the medieval boats, but we were wondering why aren't we finding the Stone Age ones? But they were out there. It was just a matter of find them. I would say we were looking for them. Trevor found this boat, I should point out, so it's his hard work that got the result. So I thought it might be easier just to show you what's like. This is we're coming from the stern here along the boat here. We've cleared off all the silt off this boat so we record it, and there's a series of cuts either side. Well, what we thought were cuts turns out they're actually cracks. You can see a pair of cracks there, and more here, and further on we have a complete break. And so you can see this is quite a long vessel, 8 meters. It was probably even longer, maybe 10, and there's totally break there. And we initially thought they were cuts in sidewalls, and we were wondering why would you cut into the sidewall of that? But actually it turns out that the logboat, because it's made of pine, it's quite soft material. It almost like how it could snap like biscuit. And over time it's kind of bent downwards and just kind of snapped up. And so that's why that's in kind of not great condition compared to some of the other logboats, which are all made of oak. And I would say that 99.5% of logboats in Ireland are oak. So these two boats here, this one and another one, probably before 3000 BC, because that's when we see the decline in pine. These are the first two pine logboats we have in the country, so they're quite important, and they're important because they're Stone Age. We get lots of other boats. This is probably the latest logboat we found. It dates from 1970 because we found this coin in it. But no, but back to Mick's point, you can't necessarily date a site, even by what's in a logboat. This boat is probably late Bronze Age, Iron Age. We haven't dated it yet, but based on the features here, we think it's of that date. Again, it has these ridges, raised ridges in the boat. We're not sure what their function is. Has a slot at the back. That's what there. Oh, here, which would have taken a transom board. So the back of the boat would have been open, and it had to probably because of tree rot. So they had to stick a slot in there to seal it up. And it's common in boats of the late Bronze Age and Iron Age. But unusually we found, this 50p coin in the boat, and we're wondering, did somebody die of it back in 1970, or did somebody accidentally drop a coin over? Probably quite valuable back in 1970, but I'd argue it's more valuable now. We found in a Bronze Age lock boat. So we do, like Mick said, we very often find Heineken cans in log boats, and we find a teacup. We find a medieval log boat. So stuff does get lost on the lake. People drop stuff overboard in boats, and you get lost. So one little interesting thing that's, again, we didn't have many medieval boats. They were mostly Bronze Age and Irish, but we starting to find this one is Red Lough, and that was an early find. Small little dinky thing. It's about 3.5 meters long, maybe originally 4 meters, and it has 2 little footrests there, and all the sides are gone. The back, the bow and the stern are gone. We turned it over. See what's like underneath, because we don't really get to see these boats from underneath because we don't lift them. But you can see how beautifully carved this is, and how this boat would have maybe skimmed through the water. It's almost like the skin of a dolphin, or a body of a dolphin here that you could fly through the water. We lifted it just to record, and we put it back in the lake and buried it in the silt to protect it. And when we're doing that, it actually, we put it in the water to see if it was floating on it. It floated there for like 2 or 3 minutes, until like a few waves came in. So it just shows how eminently suitable these vessels were for plying their way on the lake. So this is a one person canoe here. You've got 2 footrests here, and you would have had a single rower. The upper bits, what we're missing is the seat and the oarlocks. We get that in other boats. This is a similar boat, and can't really see it here, but this is a 6 meter long, really finely carved boat again. And again, we have this footrest here towards the stern. So you would have had a rower sitting here, looking back and rowing his boat, or his or her boat, and an area here, and free for carrying people or cargo or nets. That's just another view of it. We found another one, this 5 meters long, and again, it just doesn't come up great on the screen, but this is almost completely preserved. It's we have the footrests here. We have 2 oarlocks here with a toll pin. So those modern lake boats you see out in the lake there, the exact same features, almost the exact same style here. And we have 2 slots here in the wall of the boat, in which a wooden seat would have sat. So you would have had a person here, sitting here, looking back towards the stern on the Rowan's boat. And I suppose the reason why I just want to show you is that it's kind of, in my mind, it's showing us continuity of style of use of boats on the lake. We have these boats from Donal Edge's fine book on the traditional craft of Galway, and Zara Braden's website here showing this Brickyne punt, which is described as a one-man rowing punt. It's almost the exact same setup here. A seat for one person here, for fishing probably, or whatever. Back in medieval times, maybe collecting resources, reeds, going out for a pint of milk or something like that. But it would have been used, commonly used on the lake. The vessel style has changed over time, but the design is still there. They're all about 4 or 5 meters long, that can be handled by one person. And we have, I think, four of those boats now in Lough, dating to about 600 AD, maybe up to later. We haven't dated all of them, but and Donald Lynch says in his book that these would have been common, and some houses would have had 3 or 4 of these boats in a house, so they would have been commonly used by many members of the house. So it's good to see that tradition of style of boat being used over a long period of time, even though the boat styles change into this wooden clinker built vessel. We're getting lots of log boats with stones in them, like this one here. Kilbeg Tree, Bronze Age log boat with a big pile of stones in the middle. This log boat here, again, big boulders at the back, smaller stones up the front. And unusually with this boat, it's carved from ash. It's the first vessel in Ireland carved on ash. As you can see, it's kind of got a reddish colour compared to maybe these darker ones here. So it's an unusual vessel. And I suppose we have to ask the question, why are people carrying stone around the lake when there's so much stone around the lake? Like every shore has piles of stones, or you don't have to go far, to see stones. You can see all the stone in the fields and the stone walls. So 3 of these boats, this one, these 2, and another one which I don't have here, are all found at Kilbeg in 6 meters of water, about 250 meters from shore. And we're wondering, it's possible they accidentally sunk while they're out in the lake, or we're wondering where they sunk on purpose. And there is a tradition of sinking boats on purpose in places like Austria, where you would, a lot of the lakes would freeze. You sink your boat, you put stones in it to keep on the seabed, on the lake bed, and it stops them from drying out over winter, or else like in the air, because oak would dry out quite quickly and it split, and then your boat's useless. The only issue with that is that in Austria they sink them about 1 meter of water. Here, these are all in 6 meters of water. Now, unless lake levels were significantly lower back in the Bronze Age, it wouldn't work, especially 250 meters from shore. They wouldn't have the capabilities to retrieve a boat full of stone from 6 meters of water. So the other question is that we do get ritual deposition of boats throughout Europe and a bit in Ireland. And was this an effort to sink a boat because it may be for a ritual purpose to make it as an offering to a lake god, maybe Manman MacLear, who the lake is named after, or had this boat reached the end of its kind of useful life and decided to sink it down to the lake where it had been operating all its life. And just some theories we're coming up with. I know another boat here which I went away, which is maybe a ritual offering, but a little bit that. So this is Kilbeg Tree. No, it's not working. I'll skip on. But anyway, you see, just big wads of these rocks are sitting on big wads of moss. Also get carved with the moss. So, which again, questions, why would they do that? Well, they also want to protect the boat, but they're going to sink it. Maybe they wouldn't have done that. So, we'll see. So, not all of the boats we're looking at are log boats. And Trevor has mapped a whole range of lake boats, most of them modern. Some would have engines on them and some would be quite late. And that's not been the focus of our one. But one he came up with in a long time ago, and we've been talking about diving it for many years, and we eventually got to dive in 2020, is a vessel here in the River Corrib, the old channel. Trevor was suggesting that it might be the Catch on Newer. So the infamous vessel that foundered, as known as the Anadan tragedy in September 1828, where there was 19 casualties. There's very fine language to the sinking in Anadan itself, and I suppose it's certainly well known here. And there's a famous poem about it by Anton O'Raftery. So we decided to go and survey it. We mapped it. Hydromaster, we got Hydromaster, who's a local survey company, and Brian's here, came in to map it for us. And this is like a multi-view survey of the vessel. So it's a contour map of the vessel here. And you can see that it's in poor condition. And the unusual thing about this vessel is that it's upside down. Most ships, when they sink actually the right way up, because that's the way they're built to function in water. They're really well, from naval architectural point of view, they're built to sit upright. Usually when we find wrecks on the seabed that are turned over, to the big World War I ships that were top heavy with big guns and stuff like that, and they flip over. It's unusual to see a wreck sitting upside down. And this is only in 3-4 meters of water. So we're not quite sure how it flipped over in such shallow water. Maybe it was part of a violent event, like a flood or something like that. So we wanted to try and confirm if this was in fact the the vessel related to the Anadan tragedy, even though divers have reportedly found it in the 70s south of Medlow. And that's what I kind of believe, but we said we better check it out, and we check it out anyway. But very quickly we realised that this is an image from Trevor Nortage from maybe 10 years ago. And you can see that the framing timbers, it's badly eroded, covered in zebra mussels. We dived at 2020, no zebra mussels for some reason, but covered in weed. And we're not sure what's going on there, what biological processes are going on in the lake, that the zebra mussels will be gone and will be colonised by weed. But very quickly, we found this patch on it, and since a lead patch, that we also found glue. It was glued on. So we looked at the glue. We didn't get it analysed, but it looked very much like araldite, which was invented in the 1950s. So we're thinking that this is a vessel maybe from the 1950s. We're still not 100% sure, but that's what it appears to be. But the vessel could be old itself. It could be 50 years old. It could be 70 years old. It could be one of these like turf boats that was operating up and down the lake, and eventually they've been patching it up, and eventually, it's maybe made one journey too many, and this patch here or another patch kind of gave way and sank. From our point of view, we would like to try and locate the Cashlan Nua, that wreck associated with the Anadan tragedy. The 200th anniversary is coming up in 5 years' time, and it would be good to locate it, and even have an X marks the spot for it. If there's any potential commemorative events, on it, and also we want to know where these wrecks are so that we can protect them. So if there's like a cable going across the river, or we know kind of that's we can tell people to avoid that area. Another late wreck is what I'm calling the Lynch's Island wreck. It's off Lynch's Island, which is off Clyde, again near Kilbeg, in that stretch of water. And Trevor sent this image to me here saying we have a wreck, and then he sent down an ORB, and we could see that there is a vessel there. Quite interesting in that you've all these cut timbers here, and we weren't sure if that was part of the flooring, like a wicker flooring, maybe like you might get in an old Corrib. There was a combination with these ribs, or something else. And but we dived it very quickly. We established that it's actually a clinker-built vessel, about 8-10 meters long. It's disturbed at one end, and it's carrying a cargo of cut rods, large timbers, 2 to 3 meters in length, some of it shorter, made of hazel rods. And for those who don't know what clinker is, it's this kind of method of building a boat with overlapping planking rather than edge-to-edge planking that the Vikings introduced in the 8th, 9th century to Ireland, and was adapted and used up until it's still used in modern times today, but certainly died out a lot. So we're very excited by this, and by all intents and purposes, it looks like it's a medieval. To us, it looks like it could be like a Viking vessel or a medieval vessel. These rods are almost like wicker work that you'd see in a wicker fence or a medieval house, but they're bigger, so they're probably more for constructional use. Maybe with if this vessel was on its way to Galway City, could have been used for the town defences. The hazel rods, when you uncover them, they're almost like they're brand new. This shiny bark on them here. You can see the diver here just taking some measurements. It's about 10 meters long, but what survives is about 3 meters wide. It's got a single mast step here. You can see that's we're taking the mast, and that's it there. So there's an iron nail there. The mast is now gone. It's gone. And this is kind of an overview of what it looks like from above. So we carried out a photographic survey. We were able to produce a photogrammetric model of the wreck. So you can see here's the central mast. This whole area up here is disturbed. Vessel's probably a bit longer. But there are some features on it which you can't see from here. But we find a stern, a straight stern post on it, part of a stern rudder. So when you find a stern rudder on the vessel, probably later than 13th, 14th century, probably a later vessel here. Single masted, this timber here, cross timber here to brace down the timbers, probably this stone here, I think it's sandstone to hold the timbers in place. Bit of a gap here, wondering maybe was there something else on the vessel that was organic and floated away or dissolved over time. Now, that's just our sonar view of it. So we're kind of thinking, are we dealing with a vessel like this, a double-ended vessel, maybe with a stern rudder? These are seals of Youghal and Dublin. We're kind of hoping for that. But I think on our last dive, we found this little fragment of a clay pipe here. And we got this dated, and the date is 1750 to 1850. Now, we're not sure yet if that's like this 1970 50p coin that fell in, because it is a busy area of the lake where they're doing lots of navigation works. Or if it actually belongs to one of the occupants of the vessel. And it would fit either way with the archaeology in that these type of vessels were used quite late, but we don't really have records for them work vessels like this being used on Lough Corrib, I think, let's say during maybe the 18th century. And again, if it dates to 1750, it might have been built in 1680, who knows. So we excavated Drogheda in 2006, it's dating to 1530s. And this is kind of a reconstruction of what it might look like, which is a section through it here. Clinker built vessel, stern rudder. This is almost the exact same dimensions as the Lynch's Island wreck. So this will be a good model. This might be a bit earlier, but it shows that tradition of boat building survives. If this was dating to 1300, you wouldn't really question it. Well, maybe with the stern rudder a bit, but you wouldn't question any other of the technology or the features on it. So, and again, we might have it up in 1750 or 1850. So a long-standing tradition of boat building. And, if you speak to any boat builder, they always say that they're very slow to change that technology. Again, this is a reconstruction of what the Drogheda boat might look like. And again, it might be something what the Lynch's Island vessel might look like. We've no evidence for the forward mast, but and maybe single-masted vessel. Let's skip through this one quickly, and then I might call it because we play long enough classic. But so this is one of many important log boats, but one of two which are quite spectacular, I think. And this is a case which I think is definitely a ritual deposition. It dates to about 300 BC, so it's a Iron Age vessel, and it's about 7.5 meters long, about 80 centimeters wide, made of oak, and it's quite simple, quite boxy, not a finely carved rounded vessel that would skim across the lake. It's quite boxy. Probably wasn't a great in the water. It wouldn't have been great hydrodynamically. But there's 2 seats in it, here, and it had a cargo. It had a 2-meter long steering oar, an iron spearhead, part of a handle, possibly for the spear, and then a hafted iron axe, which is here. It also developed a 4-meter long split along one side. Here, the wall was very shaky, and I suppose the reason why we think that this, and it's like had a big gap in the middle, in between 2 seats, so it was probably a cargo carrier or else a ferry boat. So it's located at this ferrying point. It's probably an Iron Age ferry or cargo carrier that would have had a gap in the middle, 2 people maybe paddling, something like this, and for transporting people and cargo and goods across the lake. This is just detail of this finely carved steering oar. It's not a paddle. It's too big to be a paddle for a log boat. The blade's too long. The blade is almost the same length as the handle, and the handle's quite thick. So it would be very hard to hold it and paddle, and it wouldn't be efficient. So we think it's probably something like this, which is almost contemporary again, is we have a steering oar on the Roger boat, which is found in County Derry, and it's probably an object that would have been used to steer a larger vessel, and that this steering oar is just a piece of cargo on the vessel. Almost the exact same kind of dimensions as this, but that's maybe a bit longer. And this Roger boat was probably originally a wicker or a skin boat, like a Corrib, but a wider kind of seagoing vessel. Maybe they reckon, based on the number of stations of people or benches here, and you would have had maybe a metre for every person. This vessel could have been maybe 20 metres long. But, that's just by the by. So I suppose one of the fascinating things about this vessel is that it had this hafted iron axe in the boat, and it wasn't just lying on the floor. It was actually incorporated into the boat and is essentially made become part of the boat. So let me try and explain that so you can understand it. So what they did was that you have this axe, they laid it up against the side wall. They carved a little niche here, so the head, that wooden head of the axe would sit into it. They lowered the seat down onto the axe, and carved a little semicircular out of the axe handle here, so the seat would clamp it in place. And essentially, the axe has become part of the boat. The axe can't be used anymore because the structural integrity of the handle is gone. This is might explain it better. You can see the semicircular notch here when taking it out, kind of broke. So that circular seat clamped it in place, and the axe has now become part of the boat. It's a very important axe. I think it's the only half-set early Iron Age axe we have. And it's this wrought iron axe here, which is hammered into shape, and it's based on a late Bronze Age style, but it's an Iron Age axe. And it's got this beautiful wooden handle here, almost like the bottom of a hurley. It's kind of like, and I know this is maybe where Galway got its fine hurling skills, is on the shores of Lough Corrib here with the use of this handle, and maybe it's Galway that introduced that style of handle to the rest of the country. But so there's a couple of things to mention. That there's 2 plug holes in the boat that and one of them's missing, so that would have let in water. And when they lower the seat, that also would let water in the sides. And you incorporate this axe into the boat, and you put these precious objects into it, and which don't all match together. And you kind of were considering, was this sunk on purpose as a votive offering to a god? And we have this widespread use, this widespread votive offerings across Europe. Loads of examples, and this exact same date, this 20-meter long canoe from Denmark, which is here, that was sunk with, again, the exact same style of spears. This one had 176 spears in it. Some of them were bent over, and they reckon that that's the spoils of war, where there's a battle. They defeated a tribe, got their weapons, maybe their prize boat, and sunk it and buried. This one's buried in the bog. A couple of 100 years later, they have another boat like that. And there's loads of examples like that in across Europe. And so we're thinking that is what's going on there. And I'm going to finish with this video here because I know we're gone over time, but again, it's a bit dark here, but this is, you can see how shallow these boats are. This is this Lee's Island 5 boat, and you can see a diver here who's measuring the boat and take detailed recordings of it. And so tedious process that can take it can take a couple of days to record a boat. So this is another ritual deposition. I think we have this scan here, and this is only one slide. On this one, I'll show you. So we have the scan here of 2 pieces of a log boat, and we think this is a case of a log boat being broken by an anchor or something. We go down and dive it, and this is one piece here. They're about 3.5 meters on. They're within 3 meters of each other, and when we dive it, we see that it's made of oak, that it wasn't smashed apart. But you see that it was actually chopped apart here. But this end is chopped. You can see all the tool marks, and this end is chopped as well. And you're kind of wondering, what are 2 bits of chopped log boat doing out in the middle of the lake? It's always in the centre point of the lake there at Clyde and Carwarnock in between the 2. So again, we think maybe this boat was a ritual offering. There is this idea, and I can't get into it now, is the idea of killing a boat, that once it's performed its function, that you actually go and physically kill it by dismantling it or possibly chopping it apart. And we get this with Bronze Age boats in England and on the continent. So this is probably clear evidence of it. I have dates in for these 2 boats here, and for all the other stuff we've dates in, and some of them are coming back in about 3 weeks. So we hope that these 2 are contemporary, and maybe not 2 separate log boats, but doesn't smash up. But again, it could be a example of that ritual deposition of the boat. So I think this is one of the finest log boats in the country. It's probably the best preserved log boat, 6.5 meters on. When we first dived it, we were convinced we were dealing with a modern wreck, because you can see it had these oarlocks here and seats, and a seat at the back. very thin walls, almost looked like, we were unseen deserved the top bit of it here. And we thought, God, this is a modern lake boat here, an narrow one. It's very close. It's dates to rent 1100, 1000s, 18. Very close to the big stone forts here at what's that? Corrib Island, Lough, yeah. And this is the vessel here. And again, when we dive it, we just see the top edges here. We see a hole here for a tow pin to take the oars. The one here, we've got a number of sets of those on them. The stern seat, and just the fine edges here, which looks very like a plank, and a very powdery, very difficult vessel to work with. The silt just plumes up. But this is an after excavation. So here's the stern. We're the stern seat here. There could have been another seat here. We have 2 little footrests here for rowing. We have a missing seat here, and then we've got 3 in place seats here with the associated oarlocks. If you look at these features, they're almost exact replica of a modern lake boat. These bench seats, oarlocks, a wooden pin sticking up to take the oar, and very similar. And again, shows this continuation of use of style and tradition over time. So that's just some other views of it there. You can see a bench oarlock here, and so there was at least 4 rowers and 1 helmsman who maybe had a steering oar on this. And it's so finely carved and light and dynamic that this would have been a really fast vessel on the lake, and would have been a high status vessel. We reckon it was probably used by it's not like the one-man bricking or punt, which maybe people built themselves. This was built by a master craftsman. As a video, I won't show that. So we think it's a high status boat, maybe used for a local chieftain or something like that. And there might have even been a fleet of these type of boats out in the lake. When we read in the annals about these battles on lakes between the Vikings, and the Irish could have been using these along with other vessels, because these could, maneuver very fast. You imagine these are almost like an Olympic rowing boat. But interestingly, we found this red sandstone block here, which is cargo, and a little small stone here, which is basically compiled of fossils. So something unusual and different here. Apologies for that photographs. And so the sandstone block is interesting in that there doesn't seem to be a lot of sandstone in the lake, according to the charts, and people might be able to tell me better, that there's some over towards Gerard here, 2 little outlets, and then some up towards Con and Lough. So I suppose in some ways it's quite a precious stone, and we do see it in some church sites here, like this in Inchgill, and wondering, this is a carved slab here, and we're wondering, is this a rough out for basically making one of these here? And was this being transported to one of these monasteries around the lake as a gift, patronage from maybe a local chieftain to the church, looking for goodwill from the church and maybe further penance and so on. We also found some weapons, 2 little iron spearheads. They're so small and tight that they're called darts. So where did the darts come from? And they would have had a short shaft, little spearhead, and they were used for close combat, for throwing. And I'm told that they were very good at piercing armor, because they were so narrow that you get in amongst the chainmail. And we're this is the time of Battle of Clontarf, stuff like that. So there would have been these wars between the Irish and the Vikings and Irish. We also have these Hibernian Norse style. So these Viking style axes that were adopted by the Irish here, they're battle axes. They're the ones you see in the programs of the Vikings and stuff like that. We've created these cherry wood handles here. So cherry wood is particularly strong and flexible, and so if you're banging heads or banging chainmail, that's just resilience in the handle here to survive that. And we see Geraldus Cambrensis, who wrote a chronicle of our history of Ireland from a very Anglo-Norman Welsh perspective, that the Irish here killed a lot of the famous and important Anglo-Norman lords here with these battle axes here. It's also a work axe, it could be a throwing axe. So you're somebody running into in a battle and you can just lob this axe. So we could have something like that. So the axes, the battle axes are on display in Clare Street if you're up in Dublin. Part of the Battle of Clontarf expedition. So I'll leave it there. Thanks so much. Yeah.